Let's see. And we are live. Cool. What is up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Hope you're having a good day so far. Awesome Prechtelevate Performance coming at you live. Today, I'm joined by my awesome guest, Elena. And I'm going to say that you're Elena the Machine for this live, just because you are pretty damn perfect in terms of following your following the plan. So that's what we're going to call you today. We're going to call you the Machine today. So you didn't know you were probably getting a nickname, but yeah, so we're joined today on this live, and yeah, we can go ahead and get things kicked off here. As you guys are tuning in, though, let us know how your day is going. Feel free to drop a comment in here saying hi, and yeah, if you're watching this later time, hashtag replay. But we'll get things kicked off. So let's give the audience a bit of a backstory on who you are and how old you are, what do you do for work, and yeah, where you're from. Let's just kind of start from there.
Cool. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Elena. I'm 28 and I am a PhD student at UC Davis, and I study plant responses to climate change. So that's kind of dual student researcher role. And I'm from Rhode Island originally, which is where I am right now, at my parents' house in their basement. And yeah, I live out in California in Sacramento normally.
That's awesome. And I know we've talked about it in the past a little bit, but what plants do you study? Do you have a couple of plants in particular that you study, or like a wide
I have
array?
one species that I study. It's a native California plant called like the California jewel flower or
Cool.
shield plant. And the Latin name is Streptanthus
There we
tortuosus.
go. Ooh, we got the scientific names coming. I haven't like and I don't know if you know this or not, but I think you might. I've got a bachelor's and a master's in like fisheries and aquatic science and like
Yeah, yeah.
environmental ecology. So like it's like I'm like sitting here. I'm like yeah, like because I still like that stuff. It's still like a part of like who I am and what I like. So it's like any opportunity to shamelessly plug nerd science like stuff. It's always just like hey, I'm about it. So cool. That's awesome. And yeah, 28, same as me. Let's go. So that's so yeah, so cool. So let's just kind of jump into things. So like before you and I worked together, what was kind of like your overarching goal, and also kind of like what the struggle behind that goal was? Because this live is going to be kind of unique in a sense, because your goal was more for like and I'll let you kind of tell it, but like bulking up a little bit in a sense, or
Yeah.
like building muscle in a sense, which is different for a lot of people coming into a fitness or like a weight loss journey, for instance. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a little weird. I got engaged in 2019 and I was like, I should lose some weight for my wedding. And then of course COVID hit. And so my wedding did not happen until 2021. And
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, how do I do this? And basically just looked up online how to like lose a little weight and
Hmm.
went into a caloric deficit. And I sort of did that for like 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, I lost a little weight and then would maintain and then lose a little more. And
Hmm.
then I'd hit a plateau and I'd be like, what do I do? And just like
Hmm.
drop my calories even further. So
Yeah.
I think I didn't have a whole lot of access to great knowledge at that
Hmm.
point. And I also didn't really know what to do after my wedding when I was like, I'm eating like 800 to 1,000
Mm,
calories a day and like
yeah.
don't know what to do. And if I tried to eat a little more, my weight would just shoot right up.
Yep.
And so I think there was just a lot of misinformation out there. And my
Yep.
friend Alexis, who had worked with Austin, was like
She's
telling
awesome.
me about this reverse diet.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, where'd you hear of that?
Yeah.
Seems like what I need to do right now.
Yeah.
And so that's how I heard of Austin. And my goal was to eat more food
Yep.
because I just, wasn't really doing so well on such low
which
calories.
which we've very successfully done, which is the cool thing. Like you were definitely eating way more food than you were when we started. And the cool thing is like so like, and I think your story is one that is a fairly common one, like like trying to lose weight. Well, what do? Like you learn about what a caloric deficit is, and then you're like, oh, cool. So I just keep dropping my calories indefinitely until I like can't do it anymore. But what happens is that one, you don't feel great being on such a low amount of calories. Like most kids, like most people, like the toddlers are supposed to consume like 1,200 calories a day on average, and it's like if somebody's consuming less than that and you're a grown ass adult, it's like oof, like what is that doing to somebody? And what that does is it's messing with your metabolism. It's causing like metabolic adaptation in a sense to where it's like you can't you either can't lose any more, or if you try to eat more to get out of this like kind of like caloric hole that you've dug for yourself, that a lot of people are digging for themselves, they gain weight really fast because their metabolisms are adapted to a really low caloric intake. And so it's a unfortunate thing that happens to a lot of people in scenarios where, and it can happen to anybody. It can happen no matter like how tall, how much you weigh at that time. Like if you adapt your metabolism to a low caloric intake, like really fast, no matter where you're at in your weight, it can suck a lot, and it can cause that like burnout route kind of deal where people, and for do and do it and for do and I will say, like, for doing it for 2 years, like, you bounce back really quick in a great way, like so that's awesome. So for you, when you were doing that, like, like super low calorie, like basically kind of plateau, lower the calories, plateau, kind of lower the calories, like route, like how is that negatively impacting you, like in your day to day?
Yeah. So I mean, when I work out like pretty hard.
Yeah, you do.
And I just could not like bring up the strength needed to like do my workout. At the time I was doing CrossFit,
Yeah.
which takes a lot out of you. And so I was
Mhm.
just feeling like tired and like not really enjoying my workouts. And I
Yeah.
also just had this overall fatigue.
Yeah.
And I really like to eat a lot of food, and it just
Yeah.
wasn't fun to have this like tiny little portion on my plate and say, I just want more food. So
Yeah.
it wasn't going so well, but of course, everyone around you is saying, you look great.
Yeah.
And you do, you're like, oh, I have like some tone going on, and,
Yeah.
I fit into this nice wedding dress and everything. So you're getting some mixed messages, but I knew it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things that it's almost like because when you're at that low of calories, like your performance, like not only in the gym but just in life in general, like you're saying, like you feel fatigued, you feel like crap. And like I've gone through some, like whenever I've tried to get like really lean for like a summer or something like that, like it is taxing on you physically, mentally, emotionally, and you're just like you start playing mind games, or you're just like, man, like look at how small that food portion is, but I feel like shit, but everybody's telling me I look great and should feel great. And it's just like, it is that mixed message thing. And it can be kind of like a tough thing sometimes. So I'm glad that we're able to get to know each other, and that Alexis put us in touch. So that way we were able to start working together towards this. And so like whenever, so overall, let's talk about this for a second. Like, what was it like coming into a fitness journey, knowing that you were going to eat more food, and before we started working together, like if I'm remembering right, like I set the expectation. I was like, you're probably going to gain a little bit of weight at first. Like that's going to happen. If you want to look and feel better, you're going to have to eat more, and you're probably going to gain weight. And so like in your mind, going from, because this is really common, like this is really common for people who do shows. This is really common for people who have gone through kind of like burnout route diets and exercise things like that in the past. It's really hard to get through the mental obstacle of, I've just spent all this time, eating less and trying to lose weight. Now you're telling me I have to eat more food in order to like look and feel better. And so for you, what was kind of like that, like mental gymnastic or hula hoop that you had to kind of like jump through? What was that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's definitely hard. I think I did a lot of like prep work before coming into a program, just for myself,
Yeah.
because I sort of knew what was coming. And
Yeah.
so, for 5 years now, I've been with a therapist,
Yeah.
and I think just like changing your mindset around things like that and having that support structure,
Yeah.
um, and being like very aware of
Mhm.
your expectations and sort of I think I think you also just have to trust the people that you're working with, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trusting my therapist, I'm trusting you to
Yeah.
like know what we're doing, right? So I'm not
Yeah.
gonna, do what I did and just gain 5 pounds in a week when I try to eat more. And so I think that was a big part of it. And one of the big pieces of that was reframing this process as like a much more long-term
Mm,
thing.
yes.
And so instead of thinking about like, okay, over the next 16 weeks that I'm working with Austin, I'm going to gain like all this weight back. it was more like, okay, if I want to like have a sustainable lifestyle,
Mhm.
I need to repair my metabolism and
Yep.
like gain, some healthy muscle and fat on my body in
Mhm.
order to kind of keep doing this for
Mhm.
I don't know how long, the rest of my life,
Yeah,
hopefully, right? So
absolutely.
there were just a few different things there, but I think it would have been harder if I hadn't sort of already gone through a number of things to help change my mindset and really
Yeah.
prepare to like commit to this
Yeah.
without kind of going half in.
Yeah, and it's and that's true too, and it's one thing I will say is sort of like, well, it's definitely like a benefit was like you knew Alexis in the program, and you were like, oh, like she followed it, did the reverse diet, it was great. I There's like proof of work or proof of concept like already there, so it's like it's easier to trust or it's easier to shift that perspective because like and I've had it happen before in the past where unfortunately where I've worked with somebody and they just couldn't get through that obstacle or they couldn't get through that it wasn't their time to get through that obstacle or get through that mindset shift yet. And I know that if like they had known somebody else kind of in the program already that had done similar things, it would have came easier. But having that trust there, that it's like that's why you invest in somebody to like a mentor or a coach or a therapist or somebody that's supposed to help provide you this service. It's like like if we were able to do it on our own, we would have done it already at that point. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like my
Yeah.
mentality about it. And if you want to get it done like faster and not spend a bunch of time and energy and waste a bunch of emotional energy and stuff on it, it's just like, find somebody that can help you do it at the end of the day, that much quicker. And so, and I agree, like I love that you mentioned, like therapy and therapists and things like that. Cause it's one of those things that like, you know, the mind body connection, like setting yourself up for success. Like if you want to have a successful, like physical, like fitness, like body transformation journey, like you need to also be willing to put yourself through a mindset or like a mindset shift or like a mind, like a sense of growth with your mindset too. Cause like, you're the body will follow what the mind tells it to do. Like if your mind's in a good place, you're going to be able to get your body to a good place. If your mind's in a bad place, you're going to have a harder time getting your body to the place that you want it to get to. And so, yeah, I love that you mentioned that because I think everybody should have like, unfortunately, it's not easy to do, especially with like healthcare and stuff like that in the US. But like everybody should have like a therapist or somebody to have like a second set of eyes on on their mindset in a sense. And so, yeah, I love that. So,
Yeah, I think, just emphasizing that like it was probably easier for me than a lot of people, but there was like 5 years of work going into
oh
that
yeah, yeah,
beforehand, right? Like
yeah,
I
you laid
was
the groundwork.
yeah,
So
like I mean, I was a Division 1, athlete in
yeah.
college. Like I had that, preparatory work of knowing how to
Hmm.
lift already and all of these
Yep.
things and seeing changes in your body. And then I went through, 4 or 5 major injuries and having
Yep.
to like deal with that. And I
Yep.
ended up gaining a bunch of weight during certain times because I couldn't exercise. And then
Yep.
working with this therapist and like dealing with all sorts of
Yep.
like disordered eating patterns in the
Yep.
past. Like, it took time, right? So I
Yep.
think you call me the machine or whatever, but like I've had a lot of work going into this before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It takes time.
Absolutely. And that's one of those things too. It's like that's why I think it's important for a lot of people to like not compare themselves to others because you don't know what groundwork they've laid in the past. You don't know you don't know like maybe their parents, maybe so and so seen like crazy success because from birth their parents were raising them and they were nutritionists or powerlifting coach or something like that. You don't know what people have gone through or what like what their learning curve is at that time. And so like everybody's different. So like the best advice you could give to anybody who's starting a journey is just focus on yourself, like focus on your own journey. Like you can't compare yourself to other people because you're just gonna like I talked about this yesterday on the live with Heather, I think, and it was just like comparison is like the thief of joy. Like you can't compare yourself to other people because otherwise you're just gonna make yourself miserable and defeat the purpose of your journey in the first place. And so because this stuff's supposed to make you feel good. It's supposed to make you It's supposed to be an enjoyable or like a fun or at least not like a negative process because otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose of it. So yeah, cool. So when you and I first met, like, was there like any like initial hesitation to like working together at all, or like how did you feel about? And you can be completely honest. You can be like, man,
I think so. I think before I talked to you, there was a lot of like, oh, do I have time to do this? I'm a PhD student. Like, I'm
Yeah.
working a lot trying to finish this degree, and I just don't know if I can, commit to all of this time it's going to take to pay this close attention to my nutrition and workouts and everything. And I tend to be a very all or nothing person. So
Yeah.
if you go into this and like be all in for a couple weeks and then just drop off the face of the planet. So there was hesitation before I talked to you, but I think by the time I talked to you, I was like a little bit desperate. And also like we had our phone call and I was like, oh, he seems great. And like I have a personal recommendation. So like I'm all in. So there wasn't that much after I talked to you. You made a good impression.
I will say, whenever like after that phone call, I was like, oh, okay, damn. Okay. That didn't take much convincing at all. Cool. Sweet. Let's do this thing. So that's awesome. Yeah. And one of those things too, and I feel like, and speaking on like, kind of like that I want to hone in on that word kind of like desperation, or that feeling kind of like desperate. And a lot of times, like, I feel like, it comes to a point for a lot of people where it's just like, man, you've kind of exhausted like your own like personal like resources, your own personal like depth of what you can actually like accomplish, because everybody's spread thin. Like, we've all got shit going on in our lives. We've all got, you're a PhD student, you're working like crazy, you've got a lot of other things going on, like same with like other people who are also working jobs and like may have kids and all these other things. It's like life is like everybody's spread thin. It's just a matter of like, what we make a priority for ourselves. And oftentimes for people, it sometimes takes getting to that kind of like, man, I've kind of exhausted my resources and I'm kind of like feeling kind of like maybe desperate or defeated in a sense. It's like, I need to do something about it. And, and that's okay. Like that's part of the process sometimes for some people, because sometimes you gotta fall down before you can get, pick yourself back up sometimes. And so I think that's, I don't think I think that for everybody that's, a part of the process. It's just a step in the process. It's not a fun step, but it's part of getting to where, you want to be eventually. So that's cool. So we've been working together. How long have we been working together for now? Since
3 months.
3 months now. I was about to say, yeah. And so since working together, what sort of results have we been able to accomplish together? Like in terms of like your mindset, your, physically, like health wise, like, cause like you've gotten like strong. You're strong as shit. I'm gonna be honest. Like it's awesome.
Yeah, no, the first thing is that my goal was to eat more. And so I am, eating about 1,000 calories more than I did before we worked together. Yeah, and it was kind of amazing how just right away you increased my calories to like
I was like, we need more food.
I was like, oh great. We're not starting at 1,200, we're starting at 1,000 or whatever. And so that was like an almost immediate sort of result, which was awesome. And I think I've sort of been slowly increasing in weight and progressive overload and strength. And so my like number on the scale has gone up kind of a lot, but my sort of measurements haven't as much. And it was nice to kind of take a break from thinking about the scale so much, which previously everyone obsesses over the scale, right? And so just learning that there are a lot of different ways to track your progress. Also focuses on these non-scale victories, which is nice. And then I have like progress photos and the body measurements as well. And so not kind of panicking, in my my Fitness Pal, for 2.5 years now I've been doing this, and I saw the number went down and then it went all the way back up pretty much to where I started, and I just feel so much better now at the same weight than I did 2 years ago, because I'm strong and I love weightlifting. So just having like a program to follow, I've tried to kind of do it in the past myself, but it's sort of hard to piece everything together. So just having like a nice example of just 4 days a week, and I feel like that's definitely enough. I'm really getting better every time I go in there.
Absolutely. And that's one of those things too. Like, I feel like very often it's just like personal best. Like it's like that. It's like, hey, that's awesome. And so I will say too, it's like those non-scale victories are really important, because somebody can look and feel completely different at the same weight or even a higher weight, depending on how they got there. And like you've gone through some crazy body recomposition since starting, and it's just one of those things. It's like that's why I say like the scale is. I mean, it's one factor, and it can be one potential indicator of progress, but it is definitely not the end all be all. And I think that getting away from hyper fixating or focusing on the scale, because everybody does. Everybody looks at the scale sometimes. If you see it, if your goal is for it to go down and it doesn't go down, it gets in your head sometimes, and it can throw people's days off sometimes. But separating yourself and your self worth and what we deem as progress from the scale, I think is like such a big mindset shift for a lot of people that like the progress will come in time. Like the results will come in time if you're doing the things that you love, if you fall in love with the habit of it rather than like the results of it. And the results will come with time. And so we just got a comment I see from Brandy saying, I love this. I've only lost 2 pounds in a month, but I lost 4 inches from my waist. Yeah. So like just like prime example, like body recomp is a real thing. And like you put on a ton of muscle and yeah, you gain weight, but like you said, you look and feel like so much better like on a daily basis. It's like so it's like so what if the scale's higher? Like that doesn't matter. So yeah, that's awesome. And I want to say too, like while we're on this live, like I'm super freaking proud of you and like really like it's been really fun working together, honestly. To touch on the one of because I know that one of your goals coming into the program was like kind of learning how to structure a workout plan for yourself for like strength training. Like how has that gone? Like do you feel like you have a good general grasp on like how to do that for yourself now going forward? Because like one of my goals like for all my clients, and everybody's timeline is different, everybody, like I said, different learning curve, different place in their own journey, but my goal ultimately is for people to be able to do this on their own long term and to be able to make this into a lifestyle. Like I don't want somebody to have to rely on me to be like their coach forever. I don't want them to have to be a client forever. If they want to, fuck yeah, cool. Like if you want to hang out and stay right, if somebody wants that, like that's awesome, but that's not my goal. Like I want to put more people in control and more power of their own journey. And that whole like knowledge is power concept. The more educated people that are out there in this stuff, the better. And so like I feel like, do you feel like that has been accomplished like since we've worked
Yeah,
together?
yeah, absolutely. I think, before this, I had been sort of looking at like, I don't know, blog articles from either power lifters or like physical therapists or, bodybuilders or just, athletes in general. And they all have very different things to say because they
Yeah,
have different goals, right? It's
yeah,
either like functional strength or, all about hypertrophy,
yes,
or, yeah, just like, and everything it's different. It's different for every person and it's personalized, but I was like getting a little lost in like
yeah,
all the, how many sets of how many reps and how
yep,
much do you rest and like how many days a week and like
yep,
yeah, the information out there is kind of a quagmire. So just having like one example of like what a person who is a professional in this like thinks is good for me and my goals was like
yeah,
enough to be like, okay, I know the basics, put in
yeah,
some compound, really heavy lifting movements, put in some isolated things, like
yep.
have some free weights, have some machines, like just, yeah, just knowing the basics, I think makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And I like that you said what you said there, like with like it is very goal dependent. Like it is very like and I think that's what's really cool about what we do here is that it's just like it's customized to you and what your goals are like coming into it. And it's cool too because like oftentimes when people start to reach goals or they start to get into fitness or they start to get into strength training, they're like, oh shit, like I really like this, or I really like this part about this. Like I want to like tap into that a lot more, or like it's a good thing. It's a great thing when you make progress or you hit a goal to set another goal, like or to have another goal like that. You're like, oh, cool, like I know how to do this now. Like I want to keep like pushing it, or I want to learn more about this thing. And so that's the beauty of like being able to like pivot whenever you want to pivot, or if there's something that piques somebody's interest that you can do that. So that's awesome. So like outside of fitness, outside of crushing the weights and hitting those PRs and things like that, what would you say is like the biggest change that you've seen in your life, whether that be through work or relationships or family, or like or even in just in your day to day? What do you think like has been the biggest shift there for you, or that you've noticed?
During this time or in general?
It can be both.
um
Either or.
Biggest changes, I think, sometimes when you're committed to a program, you sort of are forced to do other things that are good for you.
Yeah.
You know, so I've really had to focus on sleeping or else that workout just doesn't feel very good, you know.
Yeah.
So getting some consistent sleep has been
Mm,
something that I've just sort of had to do since
yeah.
starting the program. I think my partner and I have eaten better.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
I've had to communicate with him like, okay, I'm gonna do this program. Like, I'm gonna have to be pretty specific about what I'm doing. Like, if we're
Yeah.
going out for ice cream one day, like we have to plan that the day
Yeah.
before, not just like a spontaneous trip,
Yeah.
you know. And so he grumbled about it a bit at first, but I think, overall it's been a good change.
Yeah.
And just sort of paying a bit more attention to um a lot of things. One of them being just like how you plan your time. Like, what do
Yeah.
you do with your time, right? If
Mhm.
you spend more time doing something else, which like these workouts sometimes take me an hour and a half or like 2 hours
Mhm.
a day to like get them all in,
Mhm.
um you have less time for other things. So what are
Yeah.
you cutting out and what are you prioritizing? So
Yep.
I think I've had to be more intentional with my time.
For sure.
um
Which is never a
but I
bad
also think, like,
thing.
just I'm a person who needs structure, and, like,
Yeah.
having this workout pretty much, like, every morning at the same time, then the rest of my day sort of has to go a certain way as
Yep.
well, and so, having, like, those habits and that structure built in, I think
The routine
is,
of it.
a little different because as a PhD student, I'm not taking classes anymore, like,
Yeah.
no one is accountable for my time.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I could work in the middle of the night and nobody would care. But it's been sort of refreshing to have that structure in my day.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times that's something that I think people lack, like because a lot of times people lack that, either like, they go to work, that's part of their schedule, but then outside of that, like they don't have a lot of routine. They don't have a lot of like that set aside time carved out for these certain things. And I think like a big thing for a lot of people is like, having that integrated into their day, like built, because for me, like even whenever I was in college getting my master's, or even like, before that, or even now, like whenever I was, working in the real world or whatever, like it was just one of those things. It's like I would build my day around my workouts. I would build my day around the gym. I'd be like, okay, like this is when I'm working out and everything else can be around it. Or this is the time I can work out that I've carved out, and I'm going to build my day around that, and making it kind of like the center of your universe, the center of your day. Like it helps a lot, because then it's like that's the priority, and the other things, they're still priorities, but because you're saying this is the big priority, you're going to get it done. And so I think that's like, I don't know, that was a big like thing for me going into college, whenever I was like starting to, really get serious about working out. And like I was just like, man, like I've got so much shit going on. Like, how am I going to do this? And then it's like, well, you make time for what's most important to you. And if getting in shape or getting healthy or getting fit or stronger is a priority, you'll find a way. So it's one of those things. So, and clearly you have found the way. You're making it happen. So yeah, cool. So one other thing I was going to say, so like for you, like in terms of like the reverse diet process, right? Like getting to, like eat more food, like how has that been for you? Because it is a, I don't want to lead anybody astray who's watching this right now. Like a reverse diet is something that is almost certainly essential for a lot of people right now, who are probably going to be starting their journey, who have maybe gone the burnout route, or have been overly restricting their calories for a long period of time. It is a process, and it is a fairly meticulous process to reintroduce calories slowly over time into your day to day. How was that for you, or how was managing that for yourself? You know, because I know a lot of people who've asked, because I've had people ask me, they're like, what's a reverse diet? How do you do it? And I've done a live on it before, and I know how to do it. And you can tell everybody how to do it themselves, but adhering to a reverse diet on your own, it can be tough. It can be tough, because it's like you got to be really meticulous about because you just slow drip calories back into your week over week. And so yeah, so any uh I guess insider info or takeaways on that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think for me, at the very beginning, when I was like, I'm gonna make this work, it's gonna be perfect. The best thing that I did was actually plan out my calories for the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're used to eating a lot less, like figuring out what to put back in can be
Yeah.
tricky. And I really relied on my macros for that. I was
Mm-hmm.
like looking at that and saying, okay, is it like a time when I have to have really high protein or like add in maybe more fat than I'm used to?
Mm-hmm.
And then also eating like a lot more carbs before my workout. Because
Yeah.
at one point I started just like not feeling great during my workout.
Yep.
I was getting like hungry before the
Yeah.
end of it and like getting a little lightheaded. And so Austin was like, put your carbs before your workout. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Break them down quicker.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think the best thing for me to do was to plan everything out the day before.
Yeah.
As time has gone on, I don't do that as much.
Yep.
And I think when I don't do that, the struggle is like, okay, I get to the end of the day and I have 1,000 calories left. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, isn't that like a bad problem to have? Like it's like, oh no,
no, it's
I've
not.
got more food that I
But
can eat.
like,
Yeah.
and when you get in that scenario, which you will, I think knowing like what are healthy sources that are high in this thing that you need, right?
Yep.
So like if I didn't have enough fat, peanut butter.
Yep.
Like that was my go-to, or
Yep.
avocado or
Yep.
something. And if I didn't have enough carbs, like something really starchy,
Yep.
or just like a big old plate of vegetables, like you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna get up pretty good and feel fuller with that.
And I love that you said that too, because like it over time, and you could probably testify to this. Like it is you over time when you work on this stuff and you focus on this stuff, you gain a visual profile almost in a sense for what's in certain
Yeah.
foods. If you're paying attention to those things, like you said, like oh, like you eventually kind of had like maybe like a running list of food in your head that like is like oh, like I kind of need this much fat, high fat. And it's like, oh, or peanut butter. Oh, like maybe I need more protein. Oh, whatever lean protein source is your kind of go-to thing. Like, and it's just it's a skill, right? It's a skill
Yes.
and also a little bit of a habit. And like the more time and effort you put towards it, the better you're going to get at it. And so, eventually, once you reach a point where you're like, oh, like I feel content at this like body composition, this, and my calories are feeling good, like flexible dieting and like calorie and macro tracking, like they're sort of a precursor to intuitive eating, which
Yeah.
eventually people get to.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I'm starting to gain a little bit of weight. Okay, I'm going to dial it back a little bit. Like if I'm starting to, lose weight and not feel like my best. Okay, I'm going to eat a little bit more. It's a cool thing to be able to do. And so, yeah, and you honestly like crushed it. So, yeah. Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, other than that, so in terms of like, your own journey and like any, like, do you have any like golden nuggets of wisdom that you think that you would like to bestow on anybody who, is looking to start their own journey right now, or who may have been going the burnout route in the past and is like maybe hearing this and they're like nervous, or they're like, I don't want to have to eat more food and gain a little bit of weight, because you gain a little bit of weight in the short term, but it allows you to lose more weight in the long term, depending on where you're at in your own journey. And so, what would you say to them who might be thinking about starting their own journey?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to start small,
Mm-hmm.
and to like have that sort of long-term vision. And so, that's really like the key, I think, thing coming into this.
Mm-hmm.
I think beyond that, having a community. And so that can
Yeah.
be like this community, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be the people you work out with. It
Yep.
can be like an accountability buddy that you
Mm-hmm.
have. It can be your therapist, right?
Yeah.
With all the mindset stuff.
Absolutely.
Like building those support structures,
Mm.
is really key. And
Yeah.
then I think, for me, like I've done a lot of work figuring out what my accountability structure like
Mm.
looks like
Yeah.
personally. It's different for everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I need external accountability.
Yeah.
And so, finding ways to make sure you have what you need. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I think the last thing is like you gotta find a way to have fun with it.
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
I think not everyone is gonna wanna lift weights 5 times a week. It
Yeah.
just might not be your thing, but there's just so much out there. Like,
Yeah.
I did CrossFit for a little while.
Mhm.
I'm starting to miss cardio a little bit, so I'm gonna try out trail running in the new
Yeah.
year, just like on the weekends.
That's awesome.
intramural sports, like
Mm-hmm.
just get moving and find things that are fun to you.
Yeah,
Because that's how you can, like, nobody wants to spend the rest of your lives doing something that's not fun. So you got to
exactly.
find ways to do it.
It's
That's
got to be sustainable. It's got to be something sustainable. And I'll be the first to say it's like, not everybody's gonna love like traditional strength training, right? Some people might like CrossFit. Some people might like kickboxing. Will kickboxing give you like muscles and things like that you are wanting? Maybe not to the extent that strength training could, but are you going to hate strength training and really love kickboxing? Maybe. And people need to do what they enjoy, and people need to do whatever is going to be in alignment with what's fun, fit, happy, and enjoyable for them, because otherwise you're not going to be able to keep the results. Like if you can't do it on if you can't see yourself doing it for the long term, maybe it's not for you. And I'm not saying that somebody can't learn to love something. I'm not saying somebody can't learn to build that discipline and enjoy parts of it, because you're not always going to love it, like especially at the beginning. You might not, whenever it's that kind of like initial like getting into it phase. But like try different things. I think that trying different things and getting into, getting just into fitness in a sense for the love of it. Coming from a place of like, I'm doing this because I care about myself and I love myself, not because I'm punishing myself, I think is a really like good thing that a lot of people could benefit from shifting their perspective or mindset too. So yeah, but I love it. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for coming on this live today. Anything else that you want to tell the audience before we end this thing?
No, I don't think so. Just happy
Cool.
to be here, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you for coming
go
on.
for it. Good luck.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, good luck on your journeys coming into 2022. New year, new you, new opportunities. And yeah, other than that, thank you for coming on this live with me today. Appreciate it. Elena, the machine. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget, hashtag replay if you're watching this at a later time. Don't forget to give this video a like. If you got value from this, let us know your number one takeaway in the comments down below. And other than that, we will talk to you all later. Bye, guys.